Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. It has been 19 years since Purdue last beat Wisconsin on the football field, but they will have opportunity to end that drought on Saturday at Camp Randall Stadium up in Madison. We'll preview this weekend showdown after a few final thoughts on Purdue's win over Nebraska. Then, once we're done talking the Badgers, it's time to answer your questions that you sent in after 7 games of Boilermaker football. We are on the back half of the season. It flies by so fast. So much to get to today. Let's jump right in. If you don't already, though, those Q&A sessions, got to follow the show on Twitter. That's at BoilersBeyond. Be sure to follow there. Lots of good stuff on the Twitter sphere to discuss, especially now with basketball getting ready to start. Only a few weeks left to go there. Want to make sure you join the conversation on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. And yes, basketball is right around the corner. That means there is no shortage of things to talk about in the world of Purdue sports. So be sure to follow Boilers and Beyond or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode, because we have plenty of stuff coming to you, and we will be doing so all the way through March, April, that time of year. Wanted to start today with a few final thoughts from that Nebraska game that we didn't get to on the Sunday post-game show. You know, Purdue's offensive line depth is really getting a little bit thin. We saw Purdue play just 6 offensive linemen on Saturday, and it's pretty clear those are the only 6 that Jeff Brom wants out there. You know, we had discussed before the season that he had 8 that he was comfortable with, but Cam Craig, done with football, not really his choice. Daniel Johnson out for the season. That really puts a damper on things. So now you have your starting 5, Musa, Holstedge, Hartwig, Bowe, and Miller. And then you have Sione Finau, who can come in and play both guard spots. But because of that, you saw the center, Gus Hartwig, and the tackles, Mohamed Musa and Eric Miller, play every snap on Saturday against Nebraska. That's a lot. That's not ideal, but you know, this isn't the first time Purdue's had to do that. So you got to hope at this point that there aren't any more injuries, because Purdue really doesn't have another guy they're all that comfortable going to plug and play, especially now that we're in the heart of Big Ten season. Thought it was very interesting. Andrew Sawinski getting more snaps at receiver than Mershawn Rice, than Abdur-Rahman Yassin, than Tyrone Tracy. That's interesting. It's interesting because Purdue's offense features so many walk-ons, or guys who began as walk-ons. Dylan Downing, Devin Mockabee, still walk-ons. Aiden O'Connell began as a walk-on. Ben Furtney comes in at fullback some. He's a walk-on. Charlie Jones was a walk-on at Iowa. The list goes on. And now Andrew Sawinski joins that fold. And it's not a bad thing, but it does make you wonder a little bit, especially at receiver, where Purdue has recruited a number of highly regarded guys. I mean, Mershawn Rice was a high 3-star, I believe. Yassin was a 4-star recruit. Tyrone Tracy was considered a very big portal pickup when Purdue got him. Not getting all that much time out on the field. And that's not to take away from Sawinski, who does a nice job. He gets open. You know, Jeff Brom talked about him running good routes. But I'd like to see some of these guys who have the physical gifts and have the high-level athleticism start to channel that a little bit and start to produce a little bit more. Looking back and rewatching the game, boy, the special teams worse than I originally thought. We'll talk about this more later, but not very good. Purdue cannot afford for that to be an issue moving forward. And then finally, man, looking at the stats the other day, Devin Mockabee averaging 5.7 per carry this season. When's the last time Purdue had a running back getting over 5 yards per carry? I mean, maybe DJ Knox or Markell Jones did it. I don't know, but it has to have been a while. What Mockabee is doing for this team is absolutely incredible, and he will have the chance to shine yet again this weekend when Purdue heads to Wisconsin for a 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on ESPN. Purdue has not beaten the Badgers since 2003. Back then, it was a sun-soaked October afternoon in Madison. Kyle Orton had a massive day. John Standiford led the way through the air. And Ben Jones with a walk-off chip shot field goal to give Purdue the win in what was a top 15 battle at the time, a really big one for Purdue. The next time they played in 2004, you know what happened, and it began, to some extent, the downfall of Purdue football in the 2000s. And, ever since that 2004 game that ended 20-17, only 2 games in this series have been a single-score game. Coming in back-to-back years, 2017, Purdue lost by 8 up in Madison. And in 2018, Purdue lost by 3 in triple overtime in Ross-Ade. Purdue has been snake-bitten in this series, but really, it hasn't been all that close in most of the games in this series. But this is one of the more vulnerable Wisconsin teams that Purdue has seen since 2003 when the streak began. This is a Wisconsin team that is not off to the start that its fans expected. They're 3-4 overall. They're 1-3 in Big Ten play. And they're on an interim head coach. We've discussed this on the show. Did it a few weeks ago when the firing took place. But I still cannot believe Paul Chryst was fired. What a roll of the dice by Wisconsin. We will see if it pays off. So it's a very interesting situation, though, because it is the second straight week where Purdue has taken on an interim coach. But as I've said, it's almost hard to compare the two situations. Mickey Joseph is not getting the head coaching job at Nebraska on a full-time basis. He just isn't. But Jim Leonhard at Wisconsin is absolutely the favorite to get that full-time job. In fact, I agree with those who speculated that Wisconsin made the move this early so that Jim Leonhard could not take another job and would be offered the Wisconsin head coaching job. So you've got a group where, they have to know this. They have to know that they're likely playing for their next coach already. Very different situation. They're off to a mixed start, though. They got a nice win over Northwestern. They went to Ryan Field and dominated. But as every week goes by, I think we're just realizing that Northwestern is really bad. They looked good when they went over to Ireland and beat Nebraska, which really, even Nebraska isn't that good. But still now, I don't know how they lost to Northwestern. Wisconsin pummeled the Cats. But last week, they went to Michigan State. The Spartans are not off to a good start. It's not a good Spartans team. But they took down Wisconsin in overtime, a game that really Wisconsin had no business losing, and we're kind of fortunate it went to overtime. Michigan State bobbled the snap that would have been a game-winning field goal, and then in overtime, Graham Mertz dodged a bullet, probably should have thrown an interception and didn't. But Michigan State won regardless. So at 3-4, 1-3 in the Big Ten, this is a situation that Wisconsin really hasn't been in recent years for the most part. As you look at the team, though, this is still Wisconsin football. The offensive identity of this program has not changed one bit. You're going to get smash mouth football. You're going to get some play action passes, a lot of stuff to tight ends, a lot of stuff to fullbacks, not a lot of receivers, a lot of 2 wide receiver sets. That's how it rolls at Wisconsin, and they have another very good running back. They've had so many of them over the years. They have another one in Braelon Allen. He's the centerpiece of this offense, 750 yards through 7 games, over 100 per game, and he is just a big, bruising running back. He's a guy you have to drive into the ground. You're not just going to be able to hit him and knock him down. You have to drive him into the ground, and he's more than capable of carrying the ball, 25, 30 times in a game if he needs to. Last season against Purdue, he put up 140 yards, but he did so on just 12 carries. He is an absolute monster. And you look at that game last year, Ches Malusi was the leading Badger rusher in Ross-Ade Stadium last year. However, he is likely out for this game, suffered an injury against Northwestern, and early indications are he will not be able to give it a go against Purdue. There are a number of injuries on this Wisconsin team. They are not full strength at all. Neither is Purdue. Malusi's a pretty big loss. He's a really good number 2 back. The way Wisconsin likes to play, where they run the ball so heavily, it is very valuable to have a quality number 2 running back. And without Malusi, it is pretty much the Braelon Allen show, at least to what we've seen at this point. I would never rule out a Wisconsin backup 3rd-string running back coming out and putting up 100 yards. That's just how that program goes. They breed those guys. At quarterback, though, this is where the difference in Wisconsin being a really good team and Wisconsin just being average to decent lies. When they get solid quarterback play, they're really good. I mean, even you look back, was it that 2017 team that had Alex Hornibrook? He wasn't bad at all. And he got them to an undefeated regular season Big Ten championship. Even Jack Cohn had a nice year last year. And by no means, or a couple years ago, I guess, that would have been 2019. He wasn't bad. But since Cohn moved on, Mertz in 2020, 2021 just hasn't been able to get it going. 203 yards per game, 15 touchdowns to 6 picks isn't a bad ratio. Hitting 63% of his passes in a pretty conservative offense. Last year against Purdue, though, and this was the stat that told you all you needed to know, 5 for 8 for 53 yards, and they won by 17. He didn't have to throw the ball. But what you've seen against better competition this year, not very good. Just 94 yards against Ohio State, 17 for 32, 2 interceptions against Illinois. And then last week up in East Lansing, 14 for 24, a $131. I know he had 1 interception, had another 2 or 3 that probably should have been picked off. Look, it's never fun to say this, but it's pretty clear that you look back at his high 4-star rating out of high school, and it's clear it just hasn't worked out the way it was supposed to for Graham Mertz. They don't have another option, though. He's their guy right now, and he's who you're going to see on Saturday. Wisconsin's never been a program that's had great receivers. Chimere Dike is their best receiver far and away. He's pretty good. 29 receptions, 847 yards. Both of those are by far leading the team. Heck, the next closest to his 487 yards, just 280, 5 touchdowns on the season for him. This is important to watch. Just, he's not as skilled or as talented as Trey Palmer from Nebraska was, but after that performance by Purdue's defense last week, I would keep an eye on any number 1 receiver that they're going to be facing. Look, you can look at their stats. Wisconsin does not want to have to throw the ball at all. It's what they did against Purdue last year. 263 rush attempts to 175 passes on the season. Pretty significant ratio. That's a pretty big disparity. They do get 391 yards of offense a game. That's not great, but, we still, I hesitate to say it, but we're still early enough in the season where, their blowout win over Illinois State, and they had a comfortable win over a MAC team too, I believe. Or New Mexico State maybe, someone light, where they really kind of could pad those stats a bit. This isn't a great offense. And you look at the other side of the ball, for so long it's been a dominant defense that is a staple of Wisconsin football. And Jim Leonard has had some dominant defenses there. But they're not as overwhelming this year. They're giving up 21 points a game. That's good. No doubt that's very good. But that's not as overwhelming as it normally is. Now, you look at the yards per game, that's still pretty stingy. Just 330 yards a game. Some of that has to do with their pace. They like to play slow. The pace is going to go a long way in dictating this game. How this game is played. Is it played at Wisconsin's speed, where they are converting 3rd and 2 on the ground on every drive? Or is it played Purdue's speed, where Purdue speeds them up, gets a lead early, and then Wisconsin's forced to play catch-up? That is not the strength of this Badger program. Just 3.5 yards per carry for opposing ball carriers against the Wisconsin defense. Devin Maccabee, King Doru, going to have their work cut out for them on Saturday. And they have been a bit of a ball hawk defense. 11 picks through 7 games. That's pretty good. Purdue's offensive tackles have to keep an eye out for Nick Herbig on the edge. He has 6 sacks already. And if you look back to the Maryland game, when O'Connell really took a number of sacks, some of that was on him, some of that was on the O-line. But you got to watch out for that in this game because Wisconsin's going to want to get after the passer. They kind of have to because their back end has been vulnerable. Ohio State torched them, but Ohio State's going to torch everybody. But even last week, Peyton Thorne from Michigan State, who I don't think is that good, had 290 yards passing on him. He did a nice job through the air on him, and Aiden O'Connell is certainly a superior quarterback to what Peyton Thorne is. I think Purdue's going to be able to move the ball downfield through the air. Teams have been pretty good as a whole kicking against Purdue this year. Not always much you can do about that, but Wisconsin just 3 of 6 on field goal attempts this season, and I think they're on their backup kicker, if I am correct there. Looking at Purdue's injury report, man, I tweeted this after listening to Jeff Brom's media session on Monday. Purdue needs this bye to come badly. They got a lot of guys that are either hurt or injured or dinged up. I mean, there's a lot of it here. It does sound like T. Denson will miss the rest of the season. Jeff Brom made that seem like the case. Remember, he's the Kansas State transfer defensive back. He had double hernia surgery ahead of the season, and it just sounds like recovery has not gone well there. Purdue was without a starting defensive back in Chris Jefferson last weekend. He has some personal stuff going on, it appears. He tweeted out that he would be right back. Mental health's the priority. Of course it is, absolutely. But Jeff Brom said he'll be back when he's ready to come back. So no real time frame for Chris Jefferson there. Keep an eye on what Jeff Brom says on Thursday when asked about injuries. O.C. Brothers, probably going to be closer to a game day decision. I think Purdue could really use his presence here. He's one of their better linebackers at getting sideline to sideline. And against Wisconsin, that they're very north and south, but you don't want Braelon Allen to be able to kick it outside. He can beat you there too. So you'd like to have a guy like O.C. Brothers there to join Jalen Graham, give you some athleticism in the second level. Charlie Jones really isn't remotely close to 100%. Jeff Brom made that abundantly clear. Now, it sounds like he'll play Saturday, and he was excellent last weekend, but from the sounds of it, he's going to be very limited in practice, not going to have much going on there. And look, I get it. Just get him to Saturday, get him on the field, and see what he can do. Brom did mention that Devin Maccabee is a bit nicked up. He did indicate as well that Maccabee would be the starting running back on Saturday. So expect to see 45 out there. Dylan Downing's going to be out again. So it's going to be Devin Maccabee. It's going to be King Daru. Will we see Kobe Lewis for a carry or two? Maybe. But expect Maccabee and Daru to carry the load for Purdue's run game. It's time for 3 keys for Purdue as they prepare for the Badgers. And look, number 1 sounds obvious, but it is so big. And that's Purdue's run defense against Braelon Allen. If you can limit him and make Graham Mertz beat you, I think Purdue's chances are phenomenal in this game. You look back at how that game unfolded last year, where Wisconsin could run the ball every single play. They only threw 8 passes. If you can make sure that they have to put the ball in the air, your odds are better if Graham Mertz is the player who has to beat you than if Braelon Allen is. Now, Purdue hasn't been very good at stopping the power run game probably since about 2003. The 02-03 defenses were really good. Since then, Purdue hasn't had great defenses. So far, Purdue has answered every single challenge in terms of a rushing threat that's been thrown at them. This is going to be a big one yet again, but they handled Sean Tucker. They handled FAU, who like to run the ball a lot. Even without Ibrahim, Minnesota likes to run. Purdue's done a nice job against the run this year. Anthony Grant didn't get much going. Can they do it again here? If they can, and you make Graham Mertz beat you, if he does, tip of the cap. But play the percentages there. Stop Braelon Allen. You're in good shape. Number 2 is special teams. I probably harp on this too much, and I probably have too high of standards, but man, it could have cost Purdue the game last week. That missed PAT, brutal. You know, if you don't run that clock out, Nebraska's in a situation where a touchdown and an extra point beats you, and that doesn't help. Purdue hadn't been good at running down the clock. They got fortunate, they did it, but that could have beaten you. A missed field goal. You could have avoided that altogether and been up 9 instead of 6. You had a blocked punt that protection was just really bad on, and the kick return game wasn't good. Neither of the times that Deion Burks ran the ball out did he really get anywhere. Might be smarter to just take the ball at the 25-yard line than starting inside the 15 like you did. So, look, I'm not saying Purdue has to have some elite special teams unit to win this game, but you cannot have your special teams lose this game. You can't have a bad punt. You can't have missed field goals or missed extra points. No kickoffs out of bounds. No returns that hurt you. I think in general, rely on the kicking game less. Finneran had, 4 field goal attempts last week? You might want to knock that down to 1 or 2. Just in general, find ways to get the ball in the end zone and don't rely on your special teams. And number 3, it's not quite Titus and Tate with the race to 69, but give me a race to 25 in this game. I think whichever team hits 25 points first will win this game. Very possible that neither team does. This could be a really low-scoring game, but I'd be really surprised if Purdue can get 25-plus points on the board and they lose this game. Unless Wisconsin is hitting explosives, I don't think they get to 25. Now, Purdue has allowed more explosive passes than anyone in the Big Ten. That's a problem. That's becoming a legitimate trend that this defense has to overcome. I think that's the only way they get there, though. Can Graham Mertz hit deep passes time and time again to put points on the board? We'll see. That's going to be a critical thing, though. And for Purdue, you can't get sucked down into a low-scoring game. You can't have those droughts that you had at times, before the Nebraska game. Good job of that last week. Keep the pressure on when you're on offense. One of the great things about college football in general, and I absolutely love this sport. I could talk about it all day. Last weekend was just beautiful. Everything across the country was phenomenal. But there are so many meaningful games every Saturday that aren't meaningful to the casual observer. If you're a Boston College fan, for example, or if you're an Oregon State fan, and you're looking at the slate of games this weekend, 5-2 Purdue versus 3-4 Wisconsin will not jump out at you. It's just a normal Big Ten West game. But to Purdue fans, this one means a lot. This one really does. And there are games like this every Saturday that just have a little bit more meaning for one of the fan bases involved. And it's not a rivalry. No one's ever considered Wisconsin to be a rival of Purdue's. But this drought has worn on Purdue fans. There's been a lot that's changed since Ben Jones split the uprights in 2003 to defeat Wisconsin and get Purdue to, I think, 6-1 at the time. 19 years have passed. Purdue's on its fourth football coach since then. And I think Purdue is going to get it done this weekend. I think the drought ends. I'm going to go 27-21 Purdue. Look, I said it in the start. This is a vulnerable Wisconsin team. They don't have that downright nasty defense that even last year they did, that just made Purdue's day miserable. Remember, Purdue just scored one offensive touchdown against these guys last year. It was 30-13, but one of those touchdowns was a George Karlaftis scoop and score. I think Purdue does a better job of that on Saturday. Wisconsin is going to be a big test for Purdue's run defense, but they've answered the call every time this year. Can they do it again? Maybe they can. I think Aiden O'Connell's going to have to be really good to win this game, but I don't know why he can't be. There's going to be a little extra motivation for him. He did not have a good day throwing 3 interceptions against Wisconsin last year. I think he's going to have a big one. Give me Purdue, and this one would be oh so sweet for Purdue fans. I think there's going to be a good black and gold turnout up in Madison, and Purdue fans could be jumping around all evening on Saturday in Madison. Thank you to those of you who sent me in questions for the Q&A segment. Had a lot of good ones here, and the first one I want to start with. How much longer can Purdue sustain the seeming inability to separate from their opponents and leave opportunities on the field before it costs them a victory? I'll be honest, I think it's already cost Purdue 2 victories. On 2 different occasions, late in the game, Purdue got the ball back up by 3 against Penn State. They had 6:27 and 4:28 left on each of those. When each of those drives started, both times Purdue had to punt. Then Penn State scored the winning TD after the second one. There's one. I think Purdue's inability to take advantage of those opportunities and separate cost them there. And without a doubt, against Syracuse, Purdue reached the 9-point mark with 7 minutes and 54 seconds left in the second quarter. They didn't score again until 11 minutes and 25 seconds were left in the fourth quarter. They went almost half a game. That'd be about 26 minutes without scoring. Yeah, that's an inability to separate from their opponents. So I would argue that it's happened to Purdue twice already. Now, they certainly did that against Maryland and Minnesota, It didn't cost them. They really didn't put away Nebraska like they could have. Completely different game with the defense being the issue more than the offense. But yeah, Purdue has to stop playing in such close games. You're going to regress to that 50-50 mean, and I don't think that's really what Purdue wants to do. Had another one, no sighting of a package for Austin Burton yet. Will we see one if the offense needs a bit of a spark? Of course, we did see Austin Burton for the full game against FAU, but past that, none of him. And I'm going to say I doubt it. If we didn't see it against Minnesota, when O'Connell was banged up and really wasn't having a great day, I don't know when we would see an Austin Burton package. I'm not a fan of it. I think there's a pretty substantial gap between O'Connell and Burton's ability, and that's not to, drag Burton through the mud or anything, but I think O'Connell's just the better quarterback, and I think having him on the field gives Purdue the best chance to win. What about this weekend? Where does Braelon Allen rank in running backs that Purdue has faced over the past 5 years? Look, I got to put Jonathan Taylor at number 1, and I know I'm going to forget about some good ones here. Some other good ones, though. Taylor was the best. He just destroyed Purdue. A.J. Dillon from Boston College was good, although Purdue did really well on him. Travion Henderson from Ohio State last year. Mayan Williams, too. Those guys are both very good. Kenneth Walker III was a Heisman candidate. Who was the guy Northwestern had in that 2018 season opener? I can't even think of his name at this point, but he ran well on Purdue. Yeah, those are the ones that come to mind. But yeah, Braelon Allen probably is. I mean, he's up there with everyone short of Jonathan Taylor. Taylor just did horrible things to Purdue that really separate him from everyone else, and he's having a heck of a career in the NFL too. Record prediction for the final 5 games? I don't know. I can't see Purdue winning out. I would have to suspend some disbelief here to think that Purdue is going to go 5-0 at this point. That's not to say that they can't, but I don't see it happening. I'd be really surprised if Purdue goes 5-0 at this point. 4-1, I think, is the optimist's answer. I think that's realistic, too. Now, I think if Purdue loses this weekend, 3-2 becomes the most likely scenario because that Iowa-Illinois back-to-back isn't necessarily easy. I do think Northwestern and Indiana should be handled. Those teams aren't very good, but I'll go 4-1. How about that? I'll be optimistic. See if it pays off for me here. Where is Aiden O'Connell ranked in terms of national quarterbacks after his performance Saturday? Was asked if he's back in the top 10. That's probably pushing it a little bit. There are a lot of good quarterbacks out there, and a lot of them are young. I mean, there are a lot of good young quarterbacks out there. You look at Caleb Williams, you look at Drake May, you look at Quinn Ewers. I mean, those guys are all off to incredible seasons. Of course, you have the guys who are the Heisman frontrunners, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Hendon Hooker. Those guys have all been fantastic. So, look, I'd probably slide O'Connell in, low teens maybe. He's been really good, but I don't know. It's so hard to compare, too. Different offenses run differently. Hard to compare, but O'Connell's been money. He has been very good for Purdue, and without him, we saw what Purdue was. He is a legitimate, massive difference maker, and I think Purdue has one of the biggest drops from starter to backup in America. Some freshmen who are standing out so far, look, not a ton of them play, if we're being honest here. You look at redshirt freshmen You've got Devin Maccabee. You have Mohamed Musa and Marcus Bowe on the offensive line. Those guys have both been really good. Corday Sidnor at defensive end. Leo, he's been good for Purdue this year. But outside of them, I'm trying to think. I mean, who am I missing? As far as true freshmen, Caraway and Amanade, Nick Caraway, Leo, defensive end, Mo Amanade, defensive tackle. I think they're the only two that aren't redshirting. This is a very veteran Purdue team. They're very old. That's good, but I think certainly as you look ahead to next year, going to have a lot of inexperience on the field. A current bowl prediction for Purdue, they can't go to Nashville, so that's out of the picture. You look at the couple ones in Florida, it's like the Citrus Bowl, the Relia Quest Bowl. You have the Charlotte Bowl, whatever that one's called. The sponsors change too much. Ideally, you avoid the Pinstripe Bowl. That'd be miserable. But, you look, I think the Iowa game and the Illinois game are going to loom really large there in terms of where Purdue falls in the pecking order. But ideally, you end up in Florida. That'd be a really nice reward for a good season. And then finally, our longtime listener, Brian, who will be joining me in Madison this weekend. He asked me to rank the Big Ten stadiums I've been to. I've not been to Madison yet, so I can't rank it. I'll go Michigan 1, Ohio State 2. The Big House is unbelievably cool. Great environment there. I'll go Michigan State 3, Purdue 4, with Champaign Memorial Stadium at 5, Bloomington Memorial Stadium at 6, and then Ryan Field, the beautiful little stadium on the lake up in Evanston, rounding up the rear. However, when Northwestern builds this new stadium that they have proposed, boy, that could get up there. That could be really nice. I will see Camp Randall Stadium on Saturday. Looking forward to being in Madison for the first time. Going to be a very fun trip. I think there will be a lot of black and gold up there. I would be very surprised if Purdue is ahead late in the game, if there's not a boiler up chant going up in Camp Randall Stadium. Purdue fans want this one. I know you guys want this. Let's see if Purdue can go up and erase 19 years of history. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for spending your time with me. At some point Sunday, we'll be back with the reaction show. Whenever I get back from Madison, we will do that. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss that. Follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. Don't miss out on next week's Q&A. During the bye week, we will still do everything during the bye week, and we'll have a little something special for you after the bye weekend. Enjoy the game this weekend. Safe travels to those who will be heading to Madison. Until next time, take care.